Hi, I'm Matt Juron, Finance Director at Mercedes-Benz of Austin. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to talk about fraud and how to stop it before it happens. And some of you may not think that this is a big deal, but auto loan fraud costs our industry roughly $6 billion a year. Before I even get into this, I just want to preface that there's no one-shop, one-stop, fix-all solution. Fraud is always changing as technology changes, and we've all got to do our part to educate each other when we spot a new trend. Fraud is an ever-developing and growing problem that all businesses face, and as we adapt to the business world of post-2020, online shopping is going to become more of a norm. There's even been a 42% increase in digital transactions, which makes identity proofing even more challenging. I've got a few more stats I want to throw at you just to really drive it home. 45% of Americans have had their personal information and data breached in the last 5 years. A hacker attack happens every 39 seconds. And 1 in 7 new accounts are created for fraudulent activity. I could go on, but I think you get the point. Fraud happens in person and online, and here are some tips and tricks to help you spot it when it happens. In sales, we always talk about the road to the sale, starting off with the meet and greet, and the test drive. Okay, one of the things that you'll want to do is make sure that you have a valid insurance card when you go for a test drive, as well as a driver's license. At Mercedes-Benz of Austin, we have a device called Fraud Fighter, which is a device that we insert the driver's license into, and it has a bunch of touch points that it'll check to make sure that it's not a fraudulent or that the driver's license is valid. At that point in time, if it flags for something, that would be a point where I always say 2 heads are better than 1. Have somebody else take a look at it, find out why it flagged. It could have just been that the magnetic strip was scratched on the back. It could have just been it was an old driver's license that was falling apart. Once again, that's just one red flag of many that you will want to analyze to make sure that everything is still valid. So now we've gone on a test drive, we've come in, we've worked some numbers, we've agreed to the price, and now it's time to run the credit. Whether it's the sales manager, the finance manager, whoever actually runs the credit is going to be responsible for checking for those OFAC and red flag checks. OFAC is where you're going to be checking for things like money laundering, drug trafficking. We're going to run the name through. For example, I always use the Pablo Escobar example. Okay, well, he might have 800 credit and be able to buy a car, but we can't do business with him being his past and how he's conducted business in the past. So with this, we're going to be able to stop that transaction. And you have to be careful though, because this will flag all the time. For example, I'm filming this with Mr. Guzman here. Well, his last name, he said, has flagged in the past for certain things. And once again, just because you have a common last name or a foreign last name or someone with your name happen to have done something wrong in the past, it's gonna flag. Doesn't mean that we don't have to do business with them. It just means that we need to click the button for more info that will allow us to find out their real date of birth, find out their country of origin. And so we can check those things, the middle initial, and those things will help us determine if we're really dealing with the wrong or the right person to do business with. Second part about it is red flags. Now, red flags are going to be more for identity theft. It's going to check same thing, but it's going to be date of birth. It's going to check your address. Okay, has this person ever applied for credit to this address before? If not, it's going to flag. Does that address, is it associated with multiple social security numbers? Any little inconsistencies that it has, it's going to flag. Once again, doesn't mean that you can't do business with that person. It just means that you need to do a little more due diligence. For example, if the customer lives in an apartment complex, it's going to flag because multiple people use that address with different social security numbers. You want to verify that that is correct. You could ask for some sort of proof of residence or something just to prove that they live where they live. Once again, you do your due diligence on that, you clear your red flags, and you can keep going. So now let's say you're noticing some of these inconsistencies, whether it was a driver's license that flagged, it was red flag or OFAC that didn't quite check out 100%. I always tell people, Google's your friend. Go ahead and Google the address, look up where they live. We've had in the past someone out of state was trying to buy a $100,000 car, but when you Googled their house, the car was worth more than the home value. And once again, those are just red flags to check on. We always talk about social media. Okay, go to their Facebook, go to their Instagram. You want to look, make sure that's the right person that you're dealing with. Once again, all of this is just a look for inconsistencies. We've talked about, looking at the address and looking at the different things regarding their social media, but also they had to get here. Okay, you want to know, did they walk here? Did they pull in a certain car? We have access to run the license plate of the car that they came in. make sure that that's consistent. Did they drive in a really old car and they're trying to buy a really new car? Once again, it doesn't mean we don't do business with them. It just means we want to look at those things. Is that license plate in that car registered to them at that address? Once again, you're just looking for those things to help spot any of these red flags and inconsistencies. So I've given you a few tricks to help spot fraud along the way. Now let's say they've actually gone through everything, they've passed all your checks, but you still have a little bit of hesitation. At this point, it's okay to ask for additional documentation. That could be a pay stub, that could be a social security card, that could be a second form of ID. It could be setting up VIN-specific insurance. Most of the time, fraudsters don't want to set up VIN-specific insurance. If they've stolen someone's identity, when they go to add the car to their insurance policy, the person on the other end of the line is going to verify that it's them. And if they don't answer those questions correctly, they won't be able to add the policy. The other thing is going to let that real owner know that they just had a policy change. So usually those are a few things that will help do that as well. Also in today's world with COVID, everyone's wearing masks, okay? A lot of the fraudsters that we've had have had masks on and kept them on the whole time. Perfectly okay. If you don't think the photo matches that well, it's okay to ask someone to politely take down their mask just to verify their identity. The last thing I want to talk about is the off-site and out-of-state deals. In our world, in the finance world, these deals are the hardest when it comes to fraudulent activity. There's a few things that you can do to help alleviate it. Those are going to be things like checking for the driver's license. You're only going to get a picture of it, okay? So you want to make sure that you utilize the front and the back. Get a color copy. We always get a second form of ID as well. Normally, that's a passport. When we're talking about insurance, it's super important that you get VIN-specific insurance before that car leaves on the transport. Also, never, never, never send the paperwork to the customer. Okay, so we want to utilize a third-party notary service. Whether that is, we use either 123 Notary or Maverick, a lot of y'all are familiar with as well. Essentially, it costs the dealership a couple $100. We send the paperwork to that third-party notary in their zip code. That notary will reach out to the customer, set up a signing, whether it's at Starbucks, at their home, or at their work. It will make them verify their ID, photo ID, to make sure it's the correct person that's signing. Also, as a best practice, get them to do a thumbprint. They might be able to fake a photo ID, but it's very difficult to fake a thumbprint. We've had instances where people went to do the thumbprint and backed out of the whole transaction. So that's one of those things as well that will help you in those situations. Once again, there is no one person that can stop all fraud, and there's no one trick that is going to alleviate all of the fraudsters from coming to your store. You do the best you can. This is what we do here at Mercedes-Benz of Austin. I'd love to hear what any of you are doing at your stores. Thanks for your time.